Am I audible now? I think yes, I'm audible now. I could hear my voice. So, hi. Happy evening, everyone. A very good evening, and welcome to the today's YouTube live class, which is NF100, episode 70. What is NF100? It is NEET PG and FMG top 100 topics. So, we've reached to episode 70. I think it's a long way that we have come here. And today we have the topic of cerebellum that we'll try and simplify. Predominantly, we'll be focusing on the cortex layers, the deep nuclei, and the functions of the cerebellum, what happens in cerebellar lesions, all of that is what we would be seeing. All right. So let's start with it. And these are the targets, the daily targets we are following on the Telegram group also. You'll have a post test today at 9:30 p.m. And tomorrow is the last day of physiology. I hope all of you are doing well with the daily targets. So tomorrow is the last day. Renal exercise physiology is what you have to complete. And a good news for everyone who had been asking about INICET, will there be a specific batch? So we are starting INICET High Yield Revision batch on July 21. And basically it's going to be just 4 hours a day, so that will give you the pace, that will give you the time to do self-study as well. And most important, all the educators would be focusing on the last 3 years, what questions have been asked, what topics have been asked in the exam. All of those will be covered. There'll be the live doubt solving also, which will be there. There'll be a lot of mock tests, and if you miss the live class due to some reason, you can watch the recorded class as well. Right. And we also have Iconic subscription, which is an academy with Prep Ladder. And the 4+1 offer, which was running on the platform, it has been extended till tomorrow, that is 15th of July. So if you missed on that and you were regretting that you should have taken the subscription, you can do it till tomorrow. You can use the code Dr. Nikita Live while enrolling. And FMG students also, there's an ongoing batch. Even for the NEET PG students, we have the test and discussion batch, which is already going on. And all the NEET PG students, INICET students, you have a free mock test coming on July 17. And if you get great ranks, you can get up to 100% scholarship. That means a free plus subscription is what you will get. So make sure you make the best of it. All right. And these are all the subscriptions that we have. Plus light subscription is test series. We have Prof Fund and we have CMS subscription as well. So yes, let's crack it. All right. So let's start discussing the topic of cerebellum. So phylogenetically, cerebellum has been divided into archicerebellum or archicerebellum, whatever you want to call it, paleocerebellum and neocerebellum. As the term says neo means new. So that's the most recent part. Archaeological, like the excavation. So that is the oldest part. So oldest is archi, then the neo is the most recent. Right. The oldest part has the function which is the maintenance of body equilibrium, maintaining the balance. That is the oldest part and the function. Neo matlab fine coordination, which is a very advanced function. So fine coordination of voluntary movements. And paleocerebellum basically maintains the tone. Now, what is included in archi, what is paleo, and what is neo? So remember the lateral part, basically the posterior lobe here. What is anterior lobe and posterior lobe basically of the cerebellum? So here basically what we have is this is the fissure. This is called as the primary fissure of the cerebellum. So आगे primary fissure के आगे is the anterior lobe, उसके पीछे is the posterior lobe. Okay, and we have the flocculonodular lobe. So basically जो anterior lobe है, that is the paleocerebellum, बीच वाला. जो posterior है, that is the neocerebellum. Okay, that's the neocerebellum. And flocculonodular lobe. Okay, you have the nodulus and you have the flocculus. So that is basically the flocculonodular lobe is the archicerebellum. Now, if I ask you anterior lobe, posterior lobe, flocculonodular lobe. Now, a patient who is, chronic alcoholic patient, we know that, they get this imbalance, vagera. So, what part is affected with chronic alcohol abuse? What part of the cerebellum is affected by the chronic alcohol abuse? Remember, it is the anterior vermis. Okay, remember this point, it is important. Most commonly it is the anterior vermis, बीच का part anteriorly that is affected, which controls the lower limb and the trunk का balance basically. इसीलिए in alcoholics you'll see that the balance is going. ठीक है. Now archicerebellum is basically flocculonodular lobe and you have the lingula. ठीक है. So it's maintaining the balance. Balance is basically vestibular system. So remember the main connection is vestibulocerebellar. Logical balance करना है तो vestibular apparatus वाला. And also remember that the nucleus. Now which are the deep nuclei in the cerebellum? You have D, E, F, G. Dentate. Then you have emboliform. Then you have vestigial and globose. Right? Alphabetically D, E, F, G. So which one is in the archicerebellum? सबसे पुराना वाला archi मतलब oldest, vestigial. You can remember vestigial as vestigial. What is a vestigial organ? No use, बहुत पुराना है, no use, ऐसे याद कर सकते हो. So vestigial is the one which is vestigial. So it helps you to remember it is the oldest, that is archicerebellum, and it also helps you to remember that vesti is vestibular system. So it has connection with the vestibular system to maintain the balance, that is the equilibrium. Paliocerebellum. Okay, what is the paliocerebellum? So paliocerebellum is the anterior lobe. This is what we saw here, but except the lingula, because lingula we said is a part of archicerebellum. So you have whole anterior lobe and you have pyramid and the uvula. Basically, जो ये वाला part है, that is paliocerebellum. It is also your spinocerebellum. Okay, that is spino. Now remember that spine is basically maintaining the body, the muscle tone. Okay, so that's the main function there. And the nucleus are interposed. Now, which is the interposed nucleus? So you have vestigial, जो सबसे medial है, D जो सबसे बाहर है, और बीच में जो बचा, that is your E and G, that is basically your interposed is globose and emboliform. Okay, globose and emboliform. So you can remember this as interposed is egg. Egg is in the middle. That means it is interposed between D and F. Egg is in middle. Okay. And it's maintenance of muscle tone. Neocerebellum is basically your most recent part. The posterior lobe is the neocerebellum, right? And except the pyramid and the uvula, remember it's your cortico-pontocerebellar tract. Basically from the cortex to the pons to the cerebellum. What cerebellar peduncle basically connects your pons to the cerebellum? What cerebellar peduncle connects? You have the superior, middle and the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So what connects the pons to the cerebellum? When I draw the brain stem, we have the midbrain, we have the pons and we have the medulla. Just a minute. Right, so we have the midbrain, the pons and the medulla. So ये तीन peduncles हैं basically. Okay, ये तीन peduncles हैं. So remember that you have superior, middle and inferior connecting the midbrain, pons and the medulla. So pons से जो connect होगा, that is the middle, that is the thickest peduncle. Okay, that's the thickest. And remember, this is major the afferent. It is only afferent. Okay, from the cortex to the pons to the cerebellum, it is only afferent connections. There is no efferent. Okay, there is no efferent here in the middle peduncle. Okay, that's another important question. The nucleus of the neocerebellum is dentate. Okay, so remember that dentate is the neo wala. Okay, En is Ne. Dentate nucleus is the nucleus of the neocerebellum. And it has basically fine coordination is the function. Okay, the fine coordination is the function of the neocerebellum. Right? So revising it quickly, what did we see here? This is the primary fissure that we have. Anterior lobe, posterior lobe, and you have the flocculonodular lobe basically. Okay? Now, phylogenetic is archi, paleo, and the neocerebellum. Archi is your vestibulo, vestigial, that is vestigial nucleus, and it's the maintenance of body equilibrium. Paleocerebellum is basically the anterior lobe except the lingula, pyramid, and uvula. Neo is piche wala, the posterior lobe. This has the interposed nucleus, and this has the dentate nucleus. Now look at this nuclei. If you get an image, identify the cerebellar nucleus. So you see this 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Right. So the one which is right medially, vermis ke आजू बाजू में, related to the vermis. Remember, vermis the role is maintaining the balance. Vermis, VE is your vestibular system. VE is vestibular system. Vestibular is vestigial, that is vestigial nucleus. So the medial most is the vestigial. E and G, egg is the interposed nucleus बीच में जो है, और सबसे largest here you see lateral most is the dentate, which is the neocerebellum, right? You have dentato-rubrothalamic tract. Now again, if I show you this image, okay, look at this image, look at this labeling, and if I ask you, okay, let me ask you this question, that what is this nucleus labeled for? What is this nucleus labeled for here? So this is the medial most that we are seeing. This is vestigial. Okay, so the fourth one here is the vestigial nucleus. Okay, that is the vestigial nucleus. Okay, and then you have basically the globose and the emboliform, and this nucleus which you see here drawn like this, that is the dentate nucleus. ठीक है, ये जो lateral most है सबसे बड़ा, that is the dentate nucleus. Egg is present in between. Okay, that's the interposed nucleus. That is interposed. ठीक है. Now coming to the cortex, the cerebellar cortex. How many layers are there in the cerebellar cortex? How many layers are there in the cerebellar cortex? There are 3 layers. Outer to inner. Remember, it is my personal garden. Okay, it is my personal garden, that is M, P and G. Okay, you have M, P and G. That is molecular layer, Purkinje and the granular layer. ठीक है, so molecular सबसे बाहर, ये जो सबसे डार्क दिख रहा है वो है Purkinje और सबसे अंदर रहेगा granular. So you are asked this histology में image and you will be asked identify these cells. So these cells which look like this is the Purkinje cell. Okay, जो बीच वाला layer है ये Purkinje है, सबसे बाहर molecular, and the deepest one is the granule cell layer. Okay, the granule cell layer. Now coming to the connections. Okay, the connections of the various cells. How many cells are we having here? We have the granule cell, we have the Golgi cell, we have the Purkinje cell, the basket cell, and the stellate cell. Okay, so these are the 5 important cells that we have in the cerebellar cortex. Now, which is present in which layer? As the term says, Purkinje layer is the Purkinje cell. But remember that the dendrite of the Purkinje cell, that is present in the molecular layer. क्योंकि dendrite ऊपर है, फिर cell है, और फिर उसका axon है. ठीक है? Remember that this is the dendrite is present in molecular, basket and stellate is in the molecular. ठीक है, और जो नीचे है ग्रैन्यूल सेल लेयर, एज द टर्म सेज, ग्रैन्यूल में आता है जी, दैट इज ग्रैन्यूल एंड गोल्जी. Purkinje में आता है Purkinje, तो मॉलिक्यूल में आता है बाकी के दो, बास्केट और स्टिलेट, एंड ऑल्सो द डेंड्राइट्स ऑफ द Purkinje. ओके, द डेंड्राइट्स ऑफ द Purkinje. Now, what are the connections? Now, let's understand the connections. One is, you can see this input. Look at this input which is coming here. Look at this input which is coming here. And where is it going? To this cell. What cell is this? This is the Purkinje cell. What are these fibers called as, which are coming through the Purkinje cell? These are called as climbing fibers. Okay, the climbing fibers. The climbing fibers, they basically go to the Purkinje cell. Okay, the Purkinje cell. From where this climbing fiber is coming? Remember, it's the inferior olivary nucleus. Olivary nucleus, inferior, olivary nucleus, superior. Where do you have the superior olivary nucleus? Read about superior olivary nucleus anywhere? In which tract have you read about the superior olivary nucleus? Yes, superior olivary nucleus. Where have we read about superior olivary nucleus? Absolutely right. Very good. Kanika, Aman, absolutely right. That is the auditory pathway. Okay, it's a component of the auditory pathway. Very, very important. The slim mnemonic that we had, right? Slim ho gaya ya E. colima ho gaya. That is the mnemonic that we have. So superior olivary nucleus, right? That is what you have is your auditory pathway. Inferior olivary nucleus is going to the cerebellum. Okay, so this one is going to the Purkinje. Remember, it's going to the Purkinje, exciting the Purkinje. The next one, the next input is from the mossy. Remember, mossy matlab messy. There are a lot of areas from which it is coming. So mossy fibers have various sources. They come from the pons, spine, multiple jagah se aayenge. And mossy fibers, they basically come to the granule cell. And this connection is called as glomerulus. Okay, how does glomerulus look like? That is basically the messy fiber of the capillary. Remember, glomerulus is basically formed by the mossy, okay, the mesh or the mesh-like, along with the granule. Okay, that is the glomerulus. So it's going to the granule cell layer. And from this granule cell, then you will see this axon which is forming the parallel fibers. Granule forms the parallel fibers which goes to all the cells in the rest of the cells basically in the cerebellum, the rest of the 4 cells. And you can see the only excitatory, the pink color shows the excitatory neurotransmitter. The only excitatory here is your granule cell layer. Okay, remember that granule is excitatory. Okay, glutamate is excitatory, so that is your excitatory. Now, what happens next is, look at this basket and stellate. They are sending inhibitory to the Purkinje because rest everything is inhibitory. Only the granule is the excitatory. Remember, all other connections in between the cells, they are inhibitory. So like this, Golgi is inhibiting the granule. How do you remember that? Remember, Golgi is GI. That means granule ko inhibit karne wala. Okay, it inhibits the granule. Basket and stellate, they inhibit the Purkinje. Okay, they inhibit the Purkinje. Very, very important. Now, okay. Now tell me that which is the only output nucleus from the cerebellum? The only efferent, the output nucleus in the cerebellar cortex is which one? Remember, output matlab puking out. Okay, sending something out, puking out. Remember, puking out is Purkinje. It is inhibitory or excitatory output. Remember, it is inhibitory. That means basically GABA. So you can see this output. The only output is this one, right? That is the Purkinje, and it is GABA. That means it is inhibitory. Okay, that is inhibitory. And where is this output going? Is this output going to the midbrain? Is it going to the pons? Is it going to the deep cerebellar nuclei? Where is this output going from the Purkinje? Where is this output going from the Purkinje? Midbrain, pons, the deep cerebellar nuclei, the medulla, to where is this output going? Right, it gives the output to the deep cerebellar nuclei basically. Okay, the DEFG that we saw, the deep cerebellar nuclei, and it inhibits those nuclei. So basically it has this damping function. The cerebellar nuclei ko it inhibits. Okay, so Purkinje has a very, very important role in getting the input from the rest of the centers, right? And then it is controlling the deep cerebellar nuclei. Okay? So everybody is clear with the connections. There are 5 cells: granule, Golgi, Purkinje, and the basket and the stellate. Right? These are my personal garden. ये layer में ये 5 cells हैं. Granule and Golgi. So granule forms basically the glomerulus with the mossy fibers. Purkinje is afferent from the climbing fibers. Granule gives excitatory to all the rest of the cells. Golgi inhibits granule. Basket stellate inhibit Purkinje. And from this, the output goes to the deep cerebellar nuclei. Okay, the inhibitory output. Okay, the only output is the Purkinje. Very, very important. Look at this other image here, basically showing you this. If this is the Purkinje, you can see the dendrites are present in the molecular layer. right? You can see this input which is basically coming. ये जो inputs आ रहे हैं आपके Purkinje में, ये कौन से fibers होंगे? These are the climbing fibers going to the Purkinje. These will be what fibers going to the granule? That is the mossy fibers forming the glomerulus. Granule is giving this parallel fibers which is exciting all the rest of the cells, right? Then you have basket and stellate which are going to Purkinje, and Purkinje is basically going out. Okay, Purkinje is going out. Now, so look at this question. The synapse between the mossy fibers and the granule cell is called as glomerulus in the cerebellum. Remember, glomerulus is like a mesh जो होता है fibers का, that is mossy fibers with the granule cell. Next one, out of the 5 cells that we saw in the cerebellar cortex, only the output from the granule is excitatory. Remember, granules are excitatory. Okay, granule is excitatory. The rest are inhibitory. Granule cell stimulates the rest of the cells. Purkinje inhibits the deep nuclei. Golgi inhibits the granule. Basket stellate, they inhibit the Purkinje. Okay? So again, just quickly revising, Purkinje cell is the only output from the cortex. It gives inhibitory output. Inhibitory is always gamma. It is giving to the cerebellar and the vestibular nuclei. It is excited by the parallel and the climbing fibers. Climbing fibers go to Purkinje. They are inhibited by basket and stellate. I hope all of you are visualizing that image. Granule is excitatory, glutaminergic to the rest of the cells by creating the parallel fibers. What inhibits the granule? Golgi. GI inhibits. What is the afferent to the granule? Mossy fibers. This is what basically forms the glomerulus, right? This is what forms the glomerulus. Next one, mossy fibers are the afferent excitatory fibers. They come to the granule cells. They excite the granule cells. They are excitatory, so glutamate, right? Mossy fibers, remember the tracks are the spinocerebellar, pontocerebellar, because they are coming from multiple sources. They come from the pons, they come from the spine, they come from the medulla. Climbing fibers, they basically have the olivocerebellar tract, because what from where it is coming? It has a single source, that is the inferior olivary nucleus. So olivocerebellar tract, it is afferent excitatory to where it is excitatory? The Purkinje cell. Okay, the Purkinje cell. Okay, the transmitter here is aspartate. Okay. So again, climbing fibers, single region of the medulla is where they originate inferior olive. They go to the Purkinje cells, right? And that is how they control the movement. Mossy fibers, many centers. So you have pontocerebellar, spinocerebellar, there are multiple. And they basically form your glomerulus. Okay, they synapse on granule cells in glomeruli. Output is Purkinje, only output, always inhibitory. GABA will be the neurotransmitter. Output is to deep cerebellar nuclei and the vestibular nucleus. So basically, this is how Purkinje inhibits the deep nuclei and it regulates the rate, range, and direction. So it maintains the synergy. Okay, it maintains the synergy. Now, let us solve some questions also here. Okay, let us solve some questions also here. Just give me a minute. Okay, let's solve some questions. Tell me, what do you think will be answer to this? Cells present in cerebellar cortex are all except. Absolutely right. Easy one. It's a bipolar cell is not present. Purkinje is present. Granule Golgi is present. Plus you have basket cell. Plus you have stellate cell. Okay, basket and stellate are present. Bipolar is not there. Next one. Cerebellar has how many layers, how many nuclei, and how many cells? Basically, remember 3, 4, 5. Layers, my personal garden. Nuclei is D, E, F, G. And the cells are granule, Golgi, Purkinje, and the basket and the stellate. Okay, 3, 4, 5. Which of these is not included in the cerebellar nuclei? Which of these is not included in the cerebellar nuclei? Right, it's the caudate because it is D, E, F, G. You don't have the C here, caudate is not there. Which of these nucleus is a part of neocerebellum? Remember EN, that is your neocerebellum. Fastigial is vestigial, that is the archicerebellum. Okay, it has the role in vestibular system, maintaining the balance. Okay, maintaining the balance. Next one. What is the function of the neocerebellum? So basically voluntary movements control, the fine control is what is the function. Okay? Purkinje fibers are inhibitory for Purkinje inhibit the deep cerebellar nuclei. Okay, they inhibit the deep cerebellar nuclei. The neurotransmitter is GABA. Next one. What do you think will be answer to this? Flocculonodular lobe has direct connection with which of the following? Flocculonodular lobe has direct connection with. See, flocculonodular lobe, what part does it form the flocculonodular lobe? That is your vestibulocerebellum wala, that is the archicerebellum. So it is the vestibular nucleus. Okay, the function is maintaining the equilibrium, that is maintaining the balance. So it is vestibular nucleus. Okay? Which of the following does not carry proprioceptive impulse? Think logically, right? You know how you can take a logical guess is what we would be learning in this question. Which of the following does not carry the proprioceptive impulse? Right. So the answer is tectocerebellar tract. Now, how do you make a logical guess? Is when I say tecto, tecto basically means the tectal plate. Where is this tectal plate? This tectal plate is basically the quadrigeminal plate. Okay, it's a quadrigeminal plate. So if this is the midbrain, you have the pons and you have the medulla. So the posterior part of the midbrain, this is the tectal plate. Basically the colliculi, the superior colliculus, the inferior colliculus, right? What is the function of superior and inferior? Eyes are superior. Remember, superior is basically the visual pathway. Auditory ears are niche. That is the auditory pathway. Inferior colliculus is auditory pathway. So basically they are the visual and the auditory pathway. It's not your proprioception. So it is tectocerebellar. Okay, the tectocerebellar. Look at this. Tectocerebellar is auditory and visual impulses via the inferior and the superior colliculi. Okay. You have cuniocerebellar, which is proprioceptive from the head and the neck. Spinocerebellar is basically from the body. The trunk and the legs is your spinocerebellar. Okay. Olivo is also proprioceptive. Remember that. Okay. All right. Tell me the next one. Lesions of the lateral cerebellum, they will cause all of the following except. Bhumi, should I do MCQs only or should I read theory? How to manage? Depends on, if your subject is strong, your concepts are good in a particular subject, you can just do the MCQs. If your particular subject is weak, then do the notes first and then do the MCQs. Anuj, absolutely right. So that's like bingo. That is what exactly it is. Yes, resting tremors are not seen, intention tremors are seen. See, resting tremors will be a feature of basal ganglia lesion, right? Like Parkinson's, okay, like Parkinson's, substantia nigra वगैरह जहाँ जाएगा. So resting tremor is seen in those cases. Coordination will go. There is intention tremor. So when the patient is trying to reach something, some object, that is the time the tremors would be seen. That is intention tremor. And ataxia, because the balance is lost. Okay, ataxia, because the balance is lost. Also tell me that if there is a cerebellar lesion, will it lead to hypotonia or hypertonia? Does it lead to hypotonia or hypertonia? Because cerebellum is maintaining the tone. Absolutely right, Mrunal. Because cerebellum is maintaining the tone. When cerebellum is gone, the tone is gone. So that is why there will be hypotonia, right? So no confusion here. Remember, it leads to hypotonia, not hypertonia. And the manifestations of the cerebellar lesion generally are ipsilateral or contralateral. The imbalance of falling is on the ipsilateral side. Okay, it is ipsilateral side. So remember, we are talking about cerebellum here. We are not talking about cerebrum. Okay. It is hypotonia that is seen. Spasticity is your corticospinal tract, the cortex, the cerebral cortex. Okay. All right. And so remember, the testing for the cerebellar lesions. So basically, there will be intention tremors, there will be past pointing, rebound phenomenon, dysdiadochokinesia that we say. अगर rapid movement बोलेंगे the patient will not be able to do that. If you are asking the patient to touch the nose, if there's a cerebellar lesion, so on the same side the patient will go past pointing, right? All these are the important points that you should remember. Okay, all these are the important points that you should remember. And as we said, remember that chronic alcohol abuse, it leads to anterior vermis lesion is common. Atrophy of the anterior vermis is common with alcoholics, chronic alcoholism. That's why the balance is gone. Okay, that is why the balance is gone. All right. So yes, that was about the today's NF100 episode, cerebellum. We have spoken about the layers, the nuclei, and the cells. How are the connections? Climbing fibers, mossy fibers, granule is excitatory, Purkinje is output, Purkinje is inhibitory, right? Those are the main points that you should remember. Okay? So that was for today. Thank you so much everyone for joining in. You have a post test coming in at 9:30 p.m. So make sure you do that. And tomorrow is the last day of physiology. All right. Thank you so much and goodbye. Take care and keep studying, keep revising, and keep winning.